Hey there. Today we're going to discover a beautiful young lady. Um, we're going to start with Tony Ortega's The Underground Bunkers article. Why did a 26-year-old Clear kill herself at Scientology's spiritual Mecca? By Tony Ortega, July 27th, 2018. What a beautiful young lady. And she has a picture of her attestation to Clear. She went Clear in 2015. In 2015, our correspondent Rod Keller posted at his own website a photo from Scientology's South Coast mission in Orange County, California. It featured a young woman named Kristi Bouck showing off a document indicating that she had attested to Clear. The state of Clear was the original goal of Dianetics when L. Ron Hubbard began his movement in 1950. It has been superseded since then, but it remains an important intermediate milestone for any Scientologist and can take years to obtain. Kristi grew up in a Scientology family in Orange County, and going Clear meant that she was on her way to L. Ron Hubbard's promised superhuman powers. She had previously spent time in the Scientology SeaOrg, the most dedicated hardcore group in the church. Last month, in early June, Kristi drove across the country with her boyfriend on their way to Scientology's spiritual Mecca in Clearwater, Florida. Her boyfriend reportedly was planning on going from Clear to OT3, another major milestone for any Scientologist, by taking expensive auditing levels at the Flag land base. Along the way, one family member said the two of them got engaged. On June 6th, just a few days after they arrived at a rental house in the nearby town of Dunedin, Kristi, who was just 26, was found dead of a gunshot wound to the chest. We have obtained a copy of the Pinellas County Medical Examiner's report, which determined that Kristi Bouck committed suicide. Her memorial at the Orange County Ideal Org on June 30th was reportedly attended by some 200 people. Kristi was well liked and admired. Many Scientologists have tried to put a happy face on the situation, celebrating Kristi at various Facebook pages and discouraging questions about how or why she died. But other Scientologists are puzzled, and as we learned when they obtained a copy of a letter that was sent by one church member to Kristi's parents. Why had there been nothing said publicly about Kristi's death occurring while she was at Flag? The letter writer asked. What was she doing in the few days that she was there? How did she obtain a gun in order to kill herself? Was she under pressure at Flag to return to the SeaOrg and give up her plans of marriage? The Pinellas County Sheriff's Office has repeatedly told us that they have nothing to say about the matter other than to give us the address of the Dunedin rental house where Kristi was found. On Wednesday, we called Kristi's father. He declined to talk to us. Because Kristi's family and her friends are active Scientologists, we are skeptical that we're going to get much information about this shocking incident. A Scientology Clear at Flag, an only 26-year-old and newly engaged, killing herself? I find it incredibly sad that another second-generation Scientologist has taken her life. Former SeaOrg officer Sonny Pereira tells us, Scientology claims to have the solutions to everything, but this was someone who had been a part of it her whole life and had moved up in the awareness to Clear and still had the same or similar issues to everyday man. A Clear should be free of aberrative human behaviors. Clears are supposed to be rid of their reactive mind, extroverted and happy. Sadly, she was unable to get the help she needed because of being convinced somehow that Scientology had all the answers. Meanwhile, looking into Kristi's story revealed that her home base, the South Coast Mission, is in disarray. The woman who attested Kristi Clear, the mission's executive director, Kim Perry, was reportedly declared a suppressive person in May, Scientology's version of excommunication. Her many Scientology friends abandoned her Facebook page almost overnight. We have seen no indication that the two incidents, Perry's declare and Kristi's suicide, have anything to do with each other, but their relative proximity has us curious. We also wondered about Kristi's attestation to clear, which took place at the South Coast Mission. Sunny, a technical expert, was surprised when we told her about that. I've been out since 2004, but never in my years on tech lines did I ever hear of clears being made in missions, Sunny said. In fact, on Hubbard's own grade chart, it notes that missions are only able to deliver services up to NED case completion, which is in all the grades and then Dianetic sessions. Clear verifications have always been required to be done in orgs. This was Hubbard's instruction. Part of the reason was to keep missions from hoarding public and instead having them move up. Apparently, all missions are now authorized to make clears. Missions creating clears. A California mission is in disarray. A California woman dead. And then if you have a piece of this puzzle, please drop us a line. We have a feeling that there's more to uncover. And then on to the next story, which is just a few days later. Another of Tony Ortega's articles that dated August 31st, 2018. Sheriff's Office report spells out tragic details of Scientology's Clear who took her own life. And another picture of our beautiful Kristi. We now have obtained a copy of the Pinellas County Sheriff Office report on the death of Kristi, the 26-year-old Scientologist we told you about last month, who ended her life on June 6th. Kristi was from Orange County, California, and had been declared a clear by Scientology in 2015. A major milestone for any Scientologist, repeating she and her fiance had driven across country so that they could take courses at the Flag Land Base. They rented a house in nearby town of Dunedin, but just 3 or 4 days after they arrived, she died from a gunshot wound. We now have more details about what happened, but not all of our questions have been answered by the 31-page report sent to us by the Sheriff's Office. Kristi was a very popular Orange County Scientologist. Her memorial service at Orange County SeaOrg reportedly drew about 200 people, restating what was in the other article. Despite reaching the state of clear, that's when Scientologists believe that the reactive mind is cleared away, and which founder L. Ron Hubbard proposed would lead to a nearly superhuman state with raised IQ. Kristi had endured bouts of depression well before she made her cross-country trip. The couple arrived in Dunedin on either Saturday or Sunday. Her fiance told the police, although his name appears in the report, we choose not to name him in the story because he was found blameless for Kristi's death by police. On June 6th, he was doing his coursework at the Scientology Center. Into the evening at 9:25, he received a text from Kristi saying that she had fed the dog and was finished with her own work. Just a few minutes later, at 10:14, the fiancé arrived home and expected Kristi to be asleep in bed or on the living room couch. When he didn't see her, he looked around and noticed that the bathroom light was on and the door was closed. He knocked, but when he didn't get a response, he opened the door and found her on the floor bleeding. She was still alive and said that she needed help and couldn't breathe. Her fiancé said he frantically tried to find where and how she had been injured and couldn't see where the blood was coming from. He noticed a note, but didn't look at it. He called 911. He did notice a hole in her shirt. He told police, but it never occurred to him that she might have shot herself. When police arrived, they too weren't clear how she had been injured and why she had lost so much blood. I asked where she was bleeding from, and she was unable to provide an answer. It did not point to any injury. wrote the first deputy on the scene. Immediately behind the deputy were medical personnel who quickly removed the bleeding woman on a stretcher and took her outside the house. Only then did they discover the gunshot wound to her chest. The deputy returned to the bathroom and then found a shell casing in the bathtub and a .45 pistol sitting on the floor behind the toilet. That's an awfully heavy thing. On the top of the toilet seat was a blood-stained 3-page suicide note. The fiancé's clothes were bloody, but it was consistent with his attempts to help Kristi when he found her. When the deputy asked him about Kristi's state of mind, he told me Kristi previously attempted suicide by overdose approximately a year before to this date in California. The contents of Kristi's note were not included in the report, but another deputy described it this way. The note was addressed to the fiancé, and it talked about the writer being sorry for not being able to thrive for herself. The letter talked about depression, lack of working financial issues, and even talked about previous suicide attempts. The letter was signed by the decedent. Kristi was declared dead when she arrived at Meese Dunedin Hospital. After a thorough examination of the scene and after forensic tests were completed, the medical examiner and sheriff's office concluded that Kristi had killed herself. When we first reported on Kristi's death last month, we heard from some readers who were suspicious about Kristi being shot in the chest. But we have spoken in the past with law enforcement officers who said that women who shoot themselves are less likely than men to aim for the head. One study we found at the CDC said that women were 47% less likely than men to do so. After seeing the thoroughness of the sheriff's office report, we have little doubt about their conclusion that Kristi took her own life with a gunshot wound to the chest. However, we were disappointed that the report said nothing about the ownership of the firearm and how Kristi came to possess it, something we were naturally curious about. In our last story, we turned to Scientology technical expert Sonny Pereira for help understanding what Kristi's death says about Scientology's claims about superhuman abilities and its science of the human mind. And again, we turned to her with the new details we've learned from the sheriff's office report. From the Scientology view of Clear, she would not be feeling depressed, Sonny says. Hubbard asserts that Dianetics can cure what ails man. That's the promise. That's the expectation. So as a Clear, her feelings of depression might have confused and upset her. As a Scientologist, she might be concerned that the problem is her. It's never a question of whether Hubbard's tech works or not. When you are that deep in, you are convinced Hubbard's tech is the only path to freedom. Many people get confused and upset, thinking the tech doesn't work on me. Many people think they are the only one with that fear, but it's common. And yes, all Scientologists believe that Hubbard's tech is all they need and would never consider getting treatment elsewhere. So seeking other treatment for depression is out of the question. She would only seek help within Scientology itself. I can't say this still currently the case, but when I was at Flag, people with past suicide attempts were not allowed on the property. So she may have been told that, and it might have been another layer of upset and rejection. I can't say for sure. When Scientology is everything you and Flag won't help you, it can be a big emotional blow. You don't say in Scientology she killed herself because she was depressed. The word depressed is not used within Scientology, except when talking to non-Scientologists. It is not even considered as a mental condition at all. In Scientology, she would be considered apathetic, that something was missed on her case, and someone invariably gets in trouble for it. The reason why it happened gets searched for in her case files, and it's ethics for those responsible. It's always rapid-fire handling, same day, maybe a couple of days after, but nonstop until it is closed out. Thank you, Sonny. We've said it in other cases, we'll say it again here. Scientology may not have caused this death, but the last thing a depressed young woman should have been involved in was anti-therapy quackery club. I found some different quotes that I really want to get into. Let me switch the page. Again, here are some quotes that I found that I wanted to bring to you and some other research. Maybe somebody in the Scientology community can help expand on this. I know people were labeled illegal PCs because of the past mental health care who fully believed that they should get a new body and start over again. They didn't get those ideas all on their own. Could Kristi have had the idea placed into her head, similar to this gentleman? Here's a quote from John Boucher. John had been told after 25 years in Scientology that he was an illegal PC because he was a security risk. He committed suicide on Sunday, May 6, 2001, believing that he would come back in another body and be able to get auditing. He wanted Scientology so much. He wanted it more than he wanted the original life where he was an illegal PC. While most Scientology teachings do not promote suicide, at least one course does seem to suggest suicide. In the Route to Infinity course, which consists of several taped lectures, Hubbard discusses something called Technique 88. In one lecture, he says, Technique 88 takes the body away. In another lecture in the same course, he says, and by the way, people who do run 88 have to furnish their own coffins. We won't furnish those here. You also have to leave a suicide note for the police. Hubbard says the only way you can control people is to lie to them, because the second you start telling anybody close to you to the truth, you start releasing him and it gets tougher and tougher to control. Technique 88. That's a quote from Technique 88. What is Technique 88? It refers to a controversial practice within the Scientology religion, considered a form of intense interrogation and thought control, often used to manipulate and indoctrinate, groom individuals by repeatedly confronting them with their perceived flaws and forcing them to conform to Scientology doctrine. It's considered a key element of the Scientology training routines, the TRs, and is widely criticized for its potentially harmful effects on individuals subjected to it. Key points of the Technique 88. It's an intense interrogation. The practice involves a relentless barrage of questions and confrontations designed to break down an individual's resistance and critical thinking abilities. It's focused on overts and withholds. Scientologists believe overts, the harmful actions, and withhold secrets can negatively impact a person's spiritual state, and Technique 88 often centers around forcing individuals to confront and confess these perceived transgressions. Isolation and pressure. Individuals undergoing Technique 88 are often isolated from external support networks and subjected to intense pressure to conform to Scientology beliefs. There's some criticisms, of course, of the Technique 88. There's psychological manipulation. Critics argue that the practice constitutes psychological manipulation and can lead to severe emotional distress, particularly in vulnerable individuals. Coercive indoctrination. The repetitive nature of the questioning and confrontation is seen as a tactic to force individuals to accept Scientology doctrine without critical analysis. Lack of transparency. Scientology often keeps the details of Technique 88 secretive, making it difficult to fully understand its practices and potential harm. So yesterday we had looked at Philip Gale. Rest in peace, Philip Gale. And the second on our list is Kristi Bouck. And let's go through some of the crimes that could be associated, allegedly, with Kristi. So let's go through, let's highlight that we have looked at Kristi. And I think I may put the date 2019 in here. We'll add that. But she was raised in Scientology. She was a second generation, so she was born and raised into it. Through her training routines and her audits and ethics handling, we know that the doctrine, policy, and practices caused sexual exploitation, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. We can't say anything about child neglect because we really don't know that. She was in the SeaOrg. She did have some medical neglect. She did have obvious, now whether or not that was instilled from her parents when she was younger or through the SeaOrg, but we know that there was some medical neglect, that she wasn't getting the mental health that she needed. We can assume schooling, but we don't have any indication from the articles. We can assume abandonment, child labor. She did not have child trafficking. She didn't have any evidence or reporting of RPF or imprisonment, no elder abuse. She said she was having financial issues, but it doesn't look like there was no evidence of anything criminal or extortion. There's suggestion of coercion, but nothing really that we can hang our hats on. Accessory after the fact, probably. In silencing conspiracy, she was probably told not to report of her mental, so that way she was already a clear from 2015, so she wouldn't have been an illegal PC, but she probably was having harassment or telling to silence her so that way she could do the OT levels or become eligible for the OT levels. So what are your thoughts? Did any of you know Kristi? Did you know the family? Let me know in the comments. Thank you. Well, let's look at Kyle Brennan next.